Good evening and welcome to tonight's city council meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First thing I'm gonna ask for is any agenda changes.
Mr. Mayor, staff has no agenda changes to present this evening.
Okay. Next item will be public forum. Is there anybody here wishing to address the council? Looking around, it doesn't appear that anybody's here to address the council, so we'll close public forum and move on and ask for the approval of the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, if there's no discussion, I'd make a motion to approve the consent agenda for June 28th, 2021 as presented.
Second.
Have the motion and the second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The consent agenda is passed. We have no unfinished business, so we'll move right into new business. And first item is consideration of American Rescue Plan Act agreements, and Ethan will bring us up to par on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've mentioned this kind of briefly in some previous work sessions, but the American Rescue Plan Act that was signed by Congress, enacted or approved by Congress, signed by the president, did establish local fiscal relief funds to help smaller local units of government deal with the financial impacts caused or exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. The city of Halstead is eligible to receive funding as a pass-through from the state of Kansas as a non-entitlement unit, which that's just how they designated cities with smaller populations such as ours. And you can see in the agenda memo there's four main categories of eligible expenses that these monies can be spent on, which include response to COVID-19 and negative economic impacts, premium pay or grants to essential workers, be they public or private sector, government services up to the amount of any revenue loss due specifically to COVID-19, and then it can also be used in investments in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. According to the state's final information, or most recent that they put out, we would expect to receive $309,633.18. We would receive half of that this fiscal year and then half of it next fiscal year, approximately 1 year from whatever date they give us our first round. So basically $155,000 would come. We do have a pretty generous window in which to determine a use for these funds, with just the need to obligate them by December 31st of 2024. Because of that broad range, the investments in water and sewer specifically, I think would be something the city would be foolhardy not to at least consider as potential investment of these funds. We're obviously going through the steps now of looking at, what kind of revenue loss we did have last year due to COVID-19. But in order to apply for these funds, there are some documents that you have to agree to, and those were included in the packet. Basically, a lot of it we have as far as a DUNS number and a tax identification number, but there are the actual terms and conditions, and then the Title VI assurance of compliance with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. So tonight we would just ask for a motion to approve the city applying for those funds when we are eligible to, and authorization for myself to be able to sign those documents, and then also establish the fund which would receive those, which would be segregated from other city funds. And then those funds would sit there until we determine a eligible and allowed use for them, which again, we don't have to spend the $155 we get. We can even wait till we have the full amount before we would invest those.
If there are no questions, I would make that motion to approve and authorize city manager to sign the documents related to the American Rescue Plan Act, local fiscal relief funds on behalf of the city of Halstead to make application for said funds and to establish a temporary ARPA fund within the city's financial structure to receive said funds.
Second.
Got the motion and the second, but before I call for the vote, two things. Sam, would you turn your mic on, please? Brad, did you look at the T's and C's on this program? And you're okay with everything? Okay. Well, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Now we'll move on to discussion of utility ordinance, and I'll go back to Ethan on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will just give a brief, looking at just some changes to the city utilities in order to try and ensure stability and solvency as those continue forward. And I will kind of turn it over to Brad, who I believe sent kind of a draft of what he was thinking. But tonight, I don't believe we have this yet in the term of where we're going to recommend adoption of any ordinance.
And that's correct in this case. This is as simplified as I can make this, and ultimately, the likelihood is fairly great that if this becomes the format we want to use, that we'll do it with the other utilities that we serve as the primary source of and for, with the infrastructure that the citizens support for delivery of those various commodities. There have been several revisions of this already in the last week in terms of discussions with the Attorney General's office, as well as I ran it by one of the attorneys at the league. There aren't a lot of other cities that have necessarily done this, but there is a process that we want to follow. Elements of it, based upon certain contract negotiations we're currently undertaking, are something that I will ask that we take up under executive session in order to discuss those more fully, since they're a form of negotiation that we don't necessarily want to make public yet at this time. However, at the point where this becomes subject to approval and formal action, we'll disclose that then. So it's kind of a draft for you to take a look at. I think it covers the bases, and I initially was going to do a comprehensive one that we just put in the general provisions. That got to be a little confusing, so I'm separating those between water, sewer, and our gas utility as well. There will also be some provision probably added to things like the services we have for electric, even though they're franchised, that reference some additional pieces of this, but we'll go through that at that time.
So we just need a motion to just table this until have further discussion on it?
Yes, that'd be my request, because I'd like to see us have a little more time to talk about it.
Well, I'll make a motion to table the action on the proposed ordinance until the next city council meeting, and for staff to make requested changes, if any.
Second.
Have the motion and the second to table this discussion until the next meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We'll table that, and it'll be on the next meeting agenda. Number 3, consideration of resolution 6/28/2108, excess surplus equipment. I'm guessing Pat's gonna have a water treatment plant full of stuff going on Purple Wave here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You can see in the motion, or in the packet, a motion to approve the resolution is recommended. You can see the listed items there, and then, of course, we do have some other various loose items, such as like the former microphones that used to be in this room, et cetera. It got very cumbersome to list that, so those were included kind of in catch-all, or like our former phones and that we are seeking to go, but the list there, the larger, I think every department's actually represented, so everybody is kind of trying to get rid of anything that is unused and get some return on those initial investments.
Spring cleaning ordinance.
So Ethan, those items that don't sell, what do we do next?
Typically, if we don't get anything off of like Purple Wave, which I don't know that we've ever not had something sell on Purple Wave, which has been fascinating because the last day and it sells, but we would then typically like probably advertise it locally and just do sealed bids on anything that doesn't go through online auction.
If there's no other discussion, I'd make a motion to approve resolution 06/28/2108, declaring certain property of City Halstead listed to be surplus and ordering said property to be sold.
Second.
Have the motion and the second to approve this resolution. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That carries unanimously. Item 4, setting of a public hearing date for the 2021 budget amendment. That sounds exciting.
Thank you. Again, it's something we've been talking about since late February, is our need to amend the budget to reflect the the gas fund expenditures that happened due to Winter Storm Uri and those costs in February, as well as now the additional expense we'll have in terms of payments to the state for that loan going through the end of the year. You can see the original 2021 adopted budget for total expenditures in the gas fund was approximately 1.7 million. Now we are asking for an amendment to bump up those expenditures to 4.3 million, just slightly over. So that is the financial impact that that 1 month had on our gas fund. And of course, it is an enterprise fund, so this is not tax related at all. So it's not raising taxes or anything. Revenues that came in are offsetting those expenditures. You do have the more detailed page that was included in the packet. But because it is anything dealing with our budget, we have to do the same process as far as arranging for a public hearing. So you all can listen and hear and answer any objections of taxpayers relating to the proposed amended use of these funds, which we scheduled to just be at our next city council meeting. And we can get that published this week and satisfy that 10-day requirement per state statute.
Well, if there's no questions, I would make a motion to set a public hearing for the proposed 2021 budget amendments for the city of Halstead on Monday, July 12th, 2021 at 7 p.m. and authorize publication of notice and the proposed budget summary.
I have one question real quick on that, I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
I
Sam.
see you have that on July 12th at 7 PM. Are we going to have that during our normal city council meeting then? Not before?
Yeah, not before it.
Okay, that's the only question I had. Thank you.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to set a public hearing for next council meeting for this 2021 budget amendment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. And last item under new business is discussion of a work session agenda. We've got a work session scheduled coming up
Yeah.
right after the holiday.
Yep, Tuesday, July 6th at 6 PM is the work session that has been scheduled. Right now, we just have the discussion of the 2022 preliminary budget on that agenda. So just before we got that set, make sure there was no additional items you all wish to discuss. You know, you guys, I think, know that budget usually tends to dominate discussion, and this year will be a little interesting because of those state budget law changes I kind of covered last meeting. But we do have probably room for, I'd say maybe 1 to 2 at most additional topics if there's anything else somebody would like to see on that work session agenda.
Anybody?
No, I'm good.
No.
I'm good with the current.
That's enough.
Yeah.
For me, is that a consensus for you, Ethan? Well, that'll take care of new business tonight. We do have one executive session this evening, and I will entertain that motion now.
All righty. I move that the Halstead City Council recess into executive session for 30 minutes to discuss contract negotiations pursuant to the consultation with an attorney on matters that would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship, exception KSA 75-4319B2. And ask that in addition to the governing body, the following persons join the governing body in executive session: city manager and city attorney. Open meeting, governing body to reconvene in city council chamber at 7:45
Second.
PM.
Have the motion and the second to adjourn to executive session. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. We will be going to the other room for executive, guys.
Now what do you do?
Play on my phone.
Whenever Ethan's ready.
I didn't.
Just go off. Okay, we are back from our executive session. Is there any action to be taken as a result of? Seeing no movement from the council, we're gonna move on to the report section. Start tonight with governing body, and I'm gonna start with you, Ed.
I have nothing. I hope everybody got, well, I guess I do have something. I hope everybody got their limbs piled up and hauled off, and some knight in flank in shining armor hauled mine off. I don't know who it was, but
Well, that's what I was gonna say. It's nice to see citizens out there helping each other and getting the place cleaned up.
Yeah, no, ditto. That's pretty much what I was gonna say too, so.
Yeah, the wife and I, we hauled a bunch of limbs on Sunday and seen quite a few people coming out to the burn site, so that does ease the work up a little bit on, public works crews. They'll be out and about in the next few days, I guess, picking up limbs, so get them by the curb. Sam?
Well, I have a few things.
Okay.
Number one is Main Street and illegal J-turns, and this is a topic that I brought up probably close to a year ago. I was standing on Main Street with a business owner, and he commented after 3 illegal turns within 5 minutes that it seems to be getting worse. And I did bring that up in a council meeting, and our law enforcement indicated that they didn't think they could enforce it, and Brad did comment that yes, it was enforceable. I would really like to see some action taken, if it's warnings or whatever, but we have adequate police staff to enforce the J-turn regulation and quit making offenses. I got a complaint from one guy that for the second time, he just about got backed into by somebody coming out across lanes of traffic. And that's a bad situation, but it's really appears to be getting worse. And the other thing is noisy vehicles. We took action. We put in a no jake brake ordinance, but we've got a couple cars, probably 3 cars, and a little white motorcycle running all around Halstead with extremely loud mufflers. And I've had people ask me what in the world the police is going to do about it. And Ethan, I guess I'll leave it up to you to handle that. And one other thing, we did a lot of security work in the city offices here with cameras and so forth. And I think it was you asked about the golf course, if we were going to do anything out there. I've talked to a couple of the people that work the desk out there. And in the last month, there's been 2 situations develop where one of them was literally threatened and bodily harm. And I think that for a little, $250, $300, $400 system, I think cameras out there would be a deterrent to possibly keep that from happening, and posting at the golf course that we do have security cameras in operation. I think it'd be a inexpensive thing to do to protect the employees that work in the front office.
I agree with that.
And
Didn't we look at that when we were looking at the camera system? Did we ever get a preliminary price on that?
Not on the golf course.
I don't think it needs to be a system that's tied in with here. It's mainly
But it needs to record.
record.
Right.
So if you get somebody acting like an idiot at the golf course and making threats, it's on camera and it can be enforced if law enforcement is called. But anyway, that's what I have. And yes, I noticed on the limb pickup, there were a lot of citizens. Somebody in a big 2-ton dump truck was running around picking up limbs. And I think that is really the nice part about Halstead. People step forward and help. I met 2 new people in town from Clearwater, Kansas, I believe. And first question they asked was, where do we take the limbs? I said, to the burn site. You have one? Yeah, but it's a nice thing to have. I'll shut up. Thank you.
No, that's fine, Sam, appreciate it. Yeah, look into that cost for the golf course, Sam, or Ethan, because, if we've got employees at risk out there, we need to mitigate that. And I agree with Sam that the price should be fairly small for a recording camera system to at least cover that clubhouse.
$400.
Anybody else have any comments?
Well, I will also mention, speak to the loud vehicles. I have also had citizens text me or run into them and say, what can you guys do about that? So,
Well, I guess I'll put this out to see if there's consensus then. We do not actually have a noise ordinance that deals specifically like with vehicles. I know other cities have, if a vehicle, be it muffler, music, et cetera, can be heard within typically, Brad, isn't it like 100 feet of the vehicle or
Yeah, there's several different definitional pieces to it.
so many?
But isn't that also covered under state law?
No.
Only I think if you actually don't have a muffler on
If it's
the
not, I'm gonna
vehicle.
tell a state trooper next time I get pulled over for loud mufflers, he
How
can't.
do you define that, Brad? How do you specifically define
A
that
little
so
bit
that
of
it
it is
is?
subjective. They set a decibel level, and we go ahead and recite that. And basically, then we add to it subjectively, windows closed, can clearly hear, something along those lines. And the one that I usually use also defines it depending upon location. If you're going through a drive-through like a McDonald's, and you're just driving by and shaking the windows on that thing, as opposed to just driving down the street, there's just, they use a number of feet, they use any kind of,
Well, it has to be quantifiable though at some point, doesn't it?
to a degree. Can you hear it at this distance in an annoying fashion? Well, what's that? But it has been put in place in many cities.
I'd like to speak to that annoying fashion. There's a guy, he lives on, his front door faces Chestnut, and he's got a built Camaro. I mean, you could tell that is a beast, and it sounds like a muscle car is supposed to sound like. He tinkers with it, and he works on it, and he runs it for a couple, a minute here. And that's not a problem. It's the other fellas who have these loud cars, and they'll sit in their driveway and just rev and rev and rev on that motor, and everybody across town can hear it. There's the difference there.
They're accelerating from a stop.
Or they're just sitting in their driveway making noise.
There were kids on Facebook the other evening. There was a couple cars running around town, pretty loud, winding them up in lower gears. And they started kind of joking between all of them about the Indy 500 beginning in Halstead and where are they at? Are they approaching turn 1 out by Martin Machine Shop? They're getting to turn 2 up by Skyline Mobile Homes and, yeah. But, the thing is, we can write ordinances, they've got to be enforced.
Yeah.
That would be, I guess my suggestion for the council, if this is a policy concern, we probably need, because the closest thing we have to a noise ordinance or something that addresses that nuisance would be the jake braking, which is specific to, commercial type vehicles, or dogs, which is covered under animal control of, keeping a dog that barks constantly. You can call that in as a noise complaint. But we have nothing that, even outside of maybe falling into the terms of like a disorderly or that, be it loud music coming from a home
Disturbing the
at certain,
peace.
yeah, I mean,
The one that doesn't get,
but for vehicles, it's harder.
Bring forth an ordinance and let the council review it, and we'll give the police department some teeth if that's what we need to do.
and we do have the nuisance ordinance in the public offense code, and that's for anything, you name it, that is a general nuisance, and that can be noise. But it's not quite as specific as drawing one that's expressly for that purpose.
We also need to make sure that it's quantifiable, right? That our officers are able to actually detect it and it's not subjective, because that's the last thing you want to be battling in court is the subjectivity of it.
Pull one of I've done them.
Well, we can buy SPL meters with VIN money.
It does seem to have gotten worse though. It does seem to have gotten worse in the last couple of years though.
Yeah, because there's a couple of Mustangs that run around here in town that like to go right down Main Street that irritates the crap out of me, and I've yelled at them before, but it doesn't do any good. They can't hear you
Both of them are
anyways.
about
They
the
can't,
same.
they can't,
Yep.
Mike, they can't hear you.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, well, we got some subject matter coming up for the next meeting.
Gonna do a work session? No.
Well, I'm gonna move on to the manager's report.
Sutherland Builders continues work on the 204 Main property. The upper roof has been removed, and they plan to start taking down the north wall this week and more of the front wall. Weather permitting, it is anticipated that the upper walls and second floor roof will be completely removed in the next 3 weeks. City had our annual levee inspection from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Overall, they were very pleased with the condition and the maintenance of the levee, and were happy with the repairs that the city had engaged for the slide that occurred on the east embankment south of the wastewater treatment plant. We do hope to receive that final inspection report with action items in the coming weeks, and then Superintendent Adams will work with Public Works staff to schedule and resolve any outstanding issues noted on the inspection. City did lose a light pole at the Ball Diamonds and 2 poles at Riverside Park. We're working with our insurance carrier and Evergy on those. No other serious property damage to city facilities has been reported by department heads yet, although staff will be devoting time to cleaning up limbs and tree debris from public property. Public Works will also be doing a leaf and limb pickup related to the storm this week. They're going to start tomorrow and do that to Wednesday. It looks like a lot of residents have already brought stuff curbside, but we just encourage anyone to, if you have leaf or limb that need picked up, make sure those items are curbside, and if it's leaves, make sure they're bagged. It is just for the yard debris, so please don't put trash or other materials curbside, as we will not pick that up. Security camera and access control improvement project for City Hall, Fire, EMS, and Public Works has suffered a postponement due to shipping delays and then an unforeseen staffing issue with the vendor. INA did contact the city about that delay and indicated last week they expect the project to begin next week around July 6th. So we're about a week and a half behind when they originally anticipated beginning. The city of Halstead will begin making payments on the $2 million low-interest utility loan that was taken out for the gas consumption and costs in February, starting July 1st. Our monthly payment amount is just over $17,000, and staff continue to monitor the gas fund balance and the incoming payments for overall stability and health of the fund. In particular, we will be watching for information concerning the rate and any potential increase as that loan rate is variable and is adjusted by the state annually. While the city can pay additional monies towards the principal for accelerated payoff, it is imperative that we not jeopardize the gas fund's ability to respond to the natural volatility in demand and pricing, or needlessly drop our reserves to a point where we couldn't respond to another issue if it would come up. The city received invoicing for the core sampling work in the 9th and Walnut area. We are coordinating with Certified Engineering Design and Engineer Foraker on the next steps for that project. Staff did also pass on the requested updates to the Powers plat, and CED indicated that they had updated the lot sizes to meet those frontage requests. We're currently working on getting a special planning commission meeting in the coming weeks scheduled so that the plat review process for the Powers plat can begin to get started. Then I did approve 2 project cost overruns regarding recent equipment purchases. The first was for $44.76 on the EMS administrative vehicle that just recently came into service. Originally, the city had anticipated receiving a red unit, but the vendor was given a white model by the manufacturer. We did consider white suitable for what we were wanting, and we didn't want to cause further delays, so we approved that change, but that did lead to a slight changing on the decaling of the vehicle with some minor modifications, so that cost increased $44.76. And then the second overrun was on the irrigation controller and head projects for Wedgwood, and that overrun was $326.33. And that was just due to additional labor and the purchase of some tools to work on those new controllers by golf course staff that had not been factored in at the time of the quote. And just making you aware of those 2 overruns per our purchase policies. And I did go ahead and authorize those so we could keep those projects going forward and get them completed. Recent meetings that I attended included the KMGA Executive Committee meeting and the Harvey County Economic Development Council. Also take part in continued meetings this week regarding potential floodplain map changes in Harvey County. I have attended webinars or meetings regarding potential health insurance options for the coming year, broadband infrastructure improvements, and ARPA funding and guidelines over the past couple of weeks. And work continues in earnest on the 2022 budget, and we hope to have that preliminary budget ready for discussion at our work session. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Ethan. Council, any questions of Ethan's report?
I have one question on the 8th and Walnut project. That's something that we'll cover in the budget meeting, I would assume, as far as trying to establish a time frame that we start on that.
Yeah, I'm hoping that with those core samples, Harlan can get us the updated estimate, and we'll know for certain whether we're talking,
A
4 blocks of replacement are only 2, and 2 that are just gonna be resurfaced, or what exactly, and then that can allow us to look and talk of, do we wanna engage in part of the work this year, do we wanna wait until we can engage all of it next year, that kind of thing, so yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions, council? Hearing no questions, we are finished with our agenda this evening, so I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you, council.